Hey guys, it's Casey and welcome back to my channel. Today is May 10th, which means that it is now officially my 11th year anniversary of being here in the modern West. Huzzah. Except for not yay, because there is nothing yay about being stuck here the way that I am. People have been excited more than usual that it is my anniversary of arrival. I have got a lot of presents this year. I'm looking right now that A actually came and he gave me a blanket, which is a very nice blanket. And he gave me, well, he didn't give me yet, he ordered for me some sea buckthorn oil, which if you recall was a real thorn in my side on the last vlog that I did because it was impossible to get. Dress came to my house a couple of nights ago and he ate my cereal dry straight out of the box like the psychopath that he is. And then tonight, me, Ash and Michelle are going out for dinner. Nate has to work so he can't come, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, depending on how you view the situation, because he does have a tendency to drink too many girly cocktails and make a scene at restaurants. So maybe it's for the best that he's not coming on this specific occasion because he can't control himself. But in general, I am just getting a lot more love and attention than I usually would on my anniversary, which, you know, last year was a decade here. 2025 was a decade here and I didn't get even half as much recognition as I did now. But I think that's because I've been warning everybody for months now, months upon months, that the 11th year is going to be very, very difficult for me. It is going to be my year of misery for reasons that will go unspoken in this video. And so I think the action plan here is to kind of get ahead of it, but I'm not sure if they really can get ahead of it, especially as my own actions over the past couple of weeks have not been conducive to getting ahead of it. I am putting myself in a corner. And to be honest, I don't think that it helps that my yearly anniversary falls like 2 days after the national citizenship ceremony for people who become an Australian citizen, because I am not an Australian citizen and I am not currently, and don't believe that I will be any point in the foreseeable future, eligible for Australian citizenship. And so even in my shitty little town, you drive past the town square and you just see all these people out waving these little Australian flags around because they've just become citizens of the nation. And it just kind of sucks that that is not an option for me at this point in time, and that it's never going to be an option for me as long as Ronald, who is a very long time enemy, and I don't even know why he is my enemy. I was in the room where shit happened, but I don't think prior to that I said more than maybe 5 words to him in the entire time that I knew him. And I'm saying knew in the loosest possible sense of the word, because I met him prior to that night on one occasion in a ballroom. It doesn't even count. Anyway, the point is, Ronald or no Ronald, not being a citizen here and not being able to return home kind of leaves me in this limbo. But at the same time, I don't think it would matter if I became not only a citizen, but they crowned me Australian of the Year. This year is going to be a miserable mess regardless of any other factors. So I may as well not be a citizen. And that was always going to be on the cards. That was always going to be the way that this played out. I warned people, I gave them 6 months advance notice that if I got to May this year and nothing had changed, that nothing had adjusted, that I was going to fall into a deep, deep situational depression. I could just feel it looming on the horizon, and here we are, and I think that is exactly what's unfolded. And so they cannot say that I have not pre-warned them and pre-booked this looming breakdown that is coming around the corner. And this is the exact conversation that I had with Dress. I had this conversation with him. I'm glad that I had this conversation with him because there wasn't really anybody else who I could have had this conversation with. But I'm going to have it here again right now, just for transparency's sake. For the last several weeks, I have been putting a lot of effort in to incorporate some of my own culture, my own past, my own history into the life that I lead here in the modern West, on the edge of the Australian outback in my shitty little town with my incredible friends. But I am finding that this is being more of a detriment than it has been a help to my looming poor mental state of mind, because I'm finding it hard. I'm finding it increasingly difficult to actually do that. In that at home, the culture that I live in, the food that you eat, the routine that you follow, it is something that is naturally occurring. It's something that you do without thinking. It's just the way that you live your life. But when I try to incorporate it here, it takes a lot of mental energy and a huge amount pre-planning in order to do even a tenth of what I would do at home. And so I come away feeling exhausted from the experience, and I also come away feeling like shit because I feel like I am cosplaying my own life. I feel like I am LARPing my own life. And that is a horrible experience on top of, again, my year 11 itch, which I already knew was coming around the corner, and here it is on its day of arrival to stay for the next 12 months at least. If not longer, I hope not longer. It is also making me think very poorly of other people in the community, because I have long been of the mind, because it was what I was taught at school in history classes, that people in the modern West don't have any culture. None of you have any culture. You live in a monolithic culture, and everything that is a cultural expression is for the most part a cultural cosplay. Now, there are a few exceptions to this, in that there are some cultures that are more removed from the monolithic culture of the modern West. However, even in those cultures, the ultimate goal of those cultures is to be fully immersed in the monolithic culture, because culture in and of itself is about daily lived experience. It is not a genetic expression. And so when I see people talking about their culture, and you look a little bit into them and their life and their social media profile, for the most part, they are not immersed in the culture that they're claiming. They are immersed in the monolithic culture. And so sometimes that makes me roll my eyes and just be like, shut up. Like, it's really annoying. But usually those feelings are very fleeting and I move on from them without a second thought. But lately they have been lingering a lot longer when I have those feelings, because it annoys me a lot. And it annoys me a lot because my lived culture was what I did in a day-to-day basis. And so I am really struggling to incorporate that back into my life here, because if you're claiming that you are part of a culture, however, all you ever do to express that culture is 2 or 3 times a year you dress up in traditional clothing and eat traditional food at a paid event or a wedding, that is not your culture. That is not how you live your life. If after that wedding you're going to come straight home to your modern house with its running water and electricity and ducted heating and cooling, and you are going to put on your blue jeans and you're going to go to McDonald's on your way back and buy a cheeseburger for the 3rd time that week and watch Netflix, that's your culture. That is what you do on a daily basis. That is who you are when nobody is looking. You are part of the monolithic culture. You can't claim that this other culture that, in a lot of the cases, unfortunately, are dead cultures in terms of lived expression these days, is your culture, because it's simply not. Your culture is what you do on a daily basis when no one is looking, naturally, from the moment you wake up in the morning to the moment you go to bed at night. That is what culture is. It is not a genetic expression. It is what you do. It is what you engage with naturally as a person. And that's also what I'm struggling with, because at the moment, for the last 11 years now, technically speaking, it is exactly 11 years to the day, I too have fallen into the trap of engaging more regularly with the monolithic culture than I do with my own culture, and I am really struggling with that. That is not the reason why this year is going to be miserable, but it is something that I am not appreciating. And so when Josh came over a couple of nights ago, I wanted to have that conversation specifically with him because he was born into a highly ritualistic and deep culture that was thrust upon him from birth, that was thrust upon everyone within his culture from birth until death. On a daily basis, there were daily routines that they had to engage with. There was daily, very strange customs that to the outsider, even to me where I came from, but definitely to here would be considered unusual and odd that he was engaging with on a daily basis. So if anyone was going to understand what it was like for me to struggle to engage with my culture, I thought that it would be him. Not that I think he particularly cares about his culture. I don't think he ever particularly cared about his culture one way or another. If anything, I imagine that he was quite resentful of his culture and found it to be detrimental to him because of his own issues with his own mind. If you watched my videos before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But the reality is that was his lived experience on a day-to-day basis from birth until he was about 29, 30-ish years old, somewhere around there. Whether he enjoyed it or not, that is just the truth of the matter. And so I guess I could have spoken about Nate about it. Definitely could have spoken about Nate about, you know, being removed from your culture of birth because he was born into an extremely rich family and ended up in a murder cult on the edge of the Australian outback that struggled day to day with finances. So he probably had some understanding, and now he lives in a van. So yeah, he probably would have some understanding about that kind of cultural shift. But I think Nate is a bit of an enigma in that way. So I tried to have that conversation with Dressed, and it didn't go according to plan, as things very rarely do when Dressed Levesque is involved. Things very rarely go to plan. And so he shifted the conversation away from the struggles that I was having to engage in culture to the struggles that I apparently have with compounded grief. So he's all like, well, have you ever actually sat down and dealt with your grief? I'm like, I don't have any real grief that I need to deal with. And no, I never sat down and dealt with it because there was never the option to sit down and deal with it. I needed to get up. That is my superpower. It has always been my superpower, is that I have incredible tenacity, and then I get up and I move on and I drag everybody up with me. And so no, I never sat down and thought things through because one, I didn't want to, and two, there was no point in doing so. It wasn't going to change anything about what had happened, and it wasn't going to bring anybody back from the friggin' dead or make reverse Uno card anything, so no. And I would prefer not to drag that up when I'm trying to have a conversation about how difficult I'm finding culture issues. But he wasn't willing to accept that, and so he made the night awkward by essentially going, oh, well, you know, you lost more in 48 hours than most people lose in their entire life, and you lost your home, and you had to leave your child behind, and you lost your pets, and you lost your people, and you lost your mother, and your husband, and everything in between, and then you got stuck with A forever, which is true, and then had to move to a different place, and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yes, thank you for my biographical recap of my life. I'm well aware of my own personal history. It's just, it was a very long time ago, and I don't feel the need to open old wounds back up and cry on each other's shoulders and braid each other's hair. Like, no, I am at a point where I have made peace with all the bad things that have happened, and especially that period of life on top of everything else. And I would rather just move on and discuss why cooking traditional food for me feels like I am being an idiot, if that's okay. Oh my god, I just can't believe that it has been officially 11 years to the day that I woke up in Dresslevek's house in Honolulu and it was like 6 o'clock in the morning and he was freaked out and he had no idea what to do with me or why I was there. And so he just took me to some cafe and brought me a lokomoko for breakfast. And it was the most delicious thing that I have eaten in the last 11 years. And I have been chasing that purple dragon ever since. And like, is it any wonder that Dresslevek hates my guts and occasionally breaks my teeth? He was living in paradise before I came along and now he lives in hell. Even though that's not strictly my fault. He isn't here because of me. He's here because of Clement, but still, I think that I am probably a contributing factor to that. Maybe. Nonetheless, I have got about an hour and a half of free time in front of me before I need to go get ready to go and meet Ash and Michelle for the evening. And so I want to read my book. I'm currently reading The Caretaker by Marcus. I can't read that backwards. Anyway, I'm reading that one. Like I've read 5 pages of it. And that's because I had a hideous experience last night. I read this book last night, which is Room for Rent. And I pushed it to the front of my TBR, which is quite long. It's about a 27 book TBR. And that's just the physical books that I have. I have about 200 on my Kindle and about 30 audiobooks that I got to get through. But I pushed it straight to the front of my TBR because when I brought it, I didn't realize that it was written by the same author as Run on Red, which I have a very difficult relationship with Run on Red in that it is not inherently a bad book. It's not a good book by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not inherently a bad book. I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't hate it. But then I accidentally brought it twice, which compounded my dislike for it to heightened levels. And so when I brought this book, and I brought it knowing that I am not a popcorn thriller girly, but the premise interested me. When I brought it, I didn't realize it was written by the same author. And so when I realized that it was written by the same author, I knew that it was either going to be a very good book that I enjoyed reading, or it was going to be a DNF. And so I wanted to get it out of the way as quickly as possible. And so I started reading it last night and I figured out the plot twist 100 pages in. And I was so convinced that I had it figured out that I went to the last page of the book to see if I was right. And lo and behold, I was right. And so I want this book out of my house immediately, right? So we are going to take it to the little library. And look, there is one of the copies of Run for Red that I left in here. One lady's trash is another lady's treasure. It is much later in the day. It's going on 9 p.m. now, and I'm back from dinner. I didn't film anything at dinner because my friends, for their own reason, don't want to appear on camera, and I respect that because why wouldn't I? I like my friends. I don't want to do anything against their will, so I didn't film dinner, but it was an incredible dinner. They got me some presents, both for my anniversary and for Mother's Day. Even though I don't have a child anymore, they always remember to get me stuff for Mother's Day. So, you know, they got me, I'm like, what is this? This is not my present. This is a present that I'm assuming Ash has got for someone's son somewhere along the road, because there's like birthday cards and stuff. I have to take this back. Okay, I have made a huge mix-up somewhere along the road. I left one of the bags of gifts at Ash's house. I've taken someone else's present off his table. Whatever. I'm assuming he's got work at 8 a.m. tomorrow, so between now and then he's not going to go and visit a child and drop that off, so I will take it into work when I go in 4 hours, because I start work at 12:30 a.m. tonight. But, you know, I got like cake, just some simple mud cake, which is actually the best cake. You know, they got me just different like clothes. It's like a hoodie, you know, t-shirts, things like that. An umbrella with dogs on it. Ash got me a Sol de Janeiro body spray one of the coconut ones that smells really good. So just things like that. I'm not going to go in and like pull everything else out because it's not that exciting. It's great. I'm very happy to have it, but it's not the most exciting of gifts, except for Ash got me this puzzle, and I have been absolutely obsessed with puzzles for like the last 2 or 3 weeks. I have finished 3 over the past, again, 2 or 3 weeks, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you gotta keep in mind that last week I worked 76 hours, so I'm not home a lot, so whenever I am home, I'm finding them to be incredibly enjoyable. He got me this one, which is super cool. It's this one right here, if you can see that. I've started pulling all the pieces out already and putting those ones together. It's like a $36 puzzle, which I think is an absolute ridiculous rorted price to pay for a puzzle, and I told him as much. I said never do that again, but he did do it, and I'm happy to have it because it's a beautiful, beautiful puzzle. It's 1,000 pieces. I'm already, even just from being home for the last 20 minutes, really enjoying pulling all those different pieces out because I'm loving puzzles at the moment. I have never been into jigsaw puzzles ever in my entire life. Even when we were living on the island and we didn't have a lot to do, it's just something that I never reached for before. But then on a whim, I brought that puzzle a couple weeks ago at Aldi, and now I've just been doing puzzles nonstop because I'm finding it is incredible at silencing my mind more than anything else, more than meditating, more than reading books. It's almost like surgery. It feels like surgery. And again, I was also never a surgery girly. I didn't enjoy doing surgery. I wasn't talented at doing surgery, which I think is genetic because my mother was the same way. Like I'm decent at doing the surgeries that I need to do and that I've always needed to do, but I've never felt compelled to pick up a scalpel and, get my hands dirty. But I'm finding this to be very similar to surgery, so maybe I need to give surgery another try. Who knows? But I'm just enjoying it a lot, and that's what I'm going to go and do right now, is pull out my puzzle, start pulling all the pieces and putting them together, and we will see.